about how is the evolution of customer service in North America and Europe?
There's been a lot of changes to the evolution of customer service over the past few years. One of the things I would say is that if you think about how customer service was done a decade ago, it was all done by telephone, maybe a little bit of email. But now customer service in North America and Europe has changed so much. What we're seeing are people more willing to go out and use web chat, social media, looking to use text messaging, even video chatting as a means of solving their customer interaction problems. And I think that enterprises and the outsourcers need to be congratulated to the extent to which they've invested in all these different channels and promoted the idea of not just customer care, but rather customer experience as a means of going about generating loyalty and interest in their products and services.
What is your opinion in the customer service in Mexico?
Customer service in Mexico is fantastic. One of the things that strikes me whenever I come to this conference or whenever I travel in Mexico, and I get to the country at least once or twice a year, is the extent to which Mexico is really leading the charge in Latin America in terms of engaging different channels, in terms of using different channels across different industries, and that consumers are more than willing than ever to go out and try and understand which channels will suit them best when they're dealing with a business that they purchase a product or service from.
Okay. What is your recommendation for companies to improve the customer services?
First thing is understand the channels that your consumers want to use. One of the biggest problems I think a business can do is go out and just take a generic approach to customer service when it comes to the channel mix. Understand, if you're working in the retail industry, that your consumers are very likely to use the telephone, they're very likely to use web chat, they're very likely to use perhaps social media. They might not be willing as much so to use text messaging. Well, then don't deploy a text message channel. Focus on the channels that are going to work best for you and work best for your enterprise. The second thing I would say is constantly invent and innovate and invest in customer experience. Understand what's working well today might not necessarily be the strategy you need in 5 years from now. And try and anticipate consumer trends, get in front of those trends, so when those trends actually do manifest themselves, you're going to be ahead of the competition.
In your opinion, how the technology improves to the customer services?
Customers, consumers love technology. Everybody around this room has a smartphone today. One of the things I saw when Keith Fiveson did his presentation was he asked how many people have smartphones. Pretty well everybody put their hands up. Understand the fact that consumers want to use these devices as a means of not just going out and getting information, but of buying and then gaining support on the back of those purchases. So I think that technology is a very, very important facet. Technology is not going away. Technology is only going to improve the customer experience, but it's up to the enterprise to understand how to evolve that discussion. It's up to the enterprise to figure out what that equation is going to be and then to take advantage of it.
What is the future in the customer services? How do you imagine in 5 or 3 years?
Okay. 3 to 5 years in customer service. It's a really interesting question. For instance, 5 years ago, nobody would have expected that mobility was going to be as big as it is in terms of the customer experience right now. But I would say that what we need to focus on are the types of interactions that people like to have. People really like to be able to get on the telephone and speak as effortlessly as possible with an agent in the best circumstances. But they equally want to try and make sure that any customer experience is going to be serviced as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And that means looking at the channels that we have today, figuring out how they're going to evolve, how they're going to be managed in 3 to 5 years, and determine what the strategy needs to be to get in front of those changes, to get in front of those different elements, and make sure that they're being handled 100% properly.
Tell me about the business process outsourcing. What is the trends in the business process outsourcing now?
So I think that one of the big trends in business process outsourcing is the willingness of enterprises to look not just at call centers, but also much more at different areas of back office work. So that could be finance and accounting, human resources, it could be procurement. We're also seeing a lot of interest when it comes to knowledge process outsourcing. So really higher value elements, an area like legal process outsourcing, very big. So I don't think there's any limit to what can be done when it comes to doing contact center work or broader BPO work. But the key understanding that has to be brought about is how willing is an organization regardless of the industry, to move some of its competencies to a third party. That willingness will determine how far BPO is going to grow over the coming few years.
And to engage the customer, what do you recommend?
To engage the customer, look, know the customer. Get as much data out of every customer interaction, whether it's voice, non-voice, or in person, as you possibly can. Understand what their likes are. Understand if they've had problems with a particular enterprise before. Understand what their buying habits might be. And I'll give you an example. When I left university, my buying habits were very different back then than now. Back then, I probably wanted the cheapest possible telephone I could get. Now that I'm working, I might want to have something that's a bit more sophisticated. But you have to understand that each consumer is going to evolve, and you've got to be at each level of the path with the consumer as they evolve to make sure that when people have more discretionary money to spend, that they're willing to spend it with that particular organization. And you get that from data mining.
Data mining, yes.
Yeah.
What are the importance of the data mining, the big data in this moment to the contact centers, for example?
It's huge. It's huge. And I think the biggest challenge that the contact centers are having is knowing what data to mine. They're having challenges in terms of interpreting and analyzing the data. And I think any contact center or any organization that uses the contact center to collect the information and then takes that data and is able to interpret, analyze, and give recommendations will be the ones that really succeed.